Sol in etrușetiam lingua sar vocatus est. Aesar, id est, reliqua parse Gaesaris nomine etrușa lingua deus vocatur. In the Gothic language, As, Is, Isus is the name of Odin, or by way of distinction, that of God. In the plural, it is Asar and Aesir. British kings fashioned their history to mythology. They claim their history is from the line of Noah. This same chronological problem is also found inserted into Phoenician, Pelasgian, and Etruscan history. Canaanites are identified in Genesis as descendants of Canaan, a son of Ham and grandson of Noah. Canaan's root is Cana, which among its many meanings is to syncretize or to give up individual leanings in order to unite more effectively as a group, while Kina means a bundle or pack. The Hebrew word for world is tevel, and it signifies the same thing as cosmos in Greek and mundus in Latin. Tevel Kana is encoded in Tubal Cain, or the whirl of the cosmos, the motion of the stars, which of course would be the descendants of darkness, Chem, which allegorizes both winter and night, and time reckoned by the journey of the sun, Noah. In order to get to the truth, should the status quo biblical narrative be erroneous, you have to debunk that first, because the same tactic is employed with the rest of Europe. Once a portion of it is identified as forgery, then the rest unravels all over the world. According to Assel, the Bastuli were one of those colonies of Phoenicians or Canaanites who settled themselves in the most early ages in that part of Spain now called Andalusia and Granada. They first began to settle near the Straits of Gibraltar, and their principal port was Cadiz. For the most part, it looks like the status quo is correct in a lot of things. They've just built their research on the foundation of astrotheology taught as history by the religious institutions and nobility. Some scholars don't think the Greeks had any commerce with the Britons because, according to Sheringham, cited by Samis, of all the great islands mentioned by an ancient poet, Great Britain wasn't one of them. Of the 7 islands nature made, Sicily the first place had for greatness. Next is Sardo Height, then Kyrnos, next Hov's country, Crete, narrow Euboea then, and Kypros. Last of all is little Lesbos placed. This would be significant because Britain's languages and artifacts prove it to be peopled by Phoenicians, who historians claimed were Pelasgic, and that Pelasgians were a race of Greeks. Assel wrote, the Arcadians were ancient Greeks. They used Ionic letters, but at what time they first wrote from left to right is not known, as their chronology is very uncertain. The Etruscan, the Ashan, and the Samnite alphabets are derived from that of the Pelasgi. They differ from each other more in name than in form. The Phoenicians, Etruscans, and Pelasgians are the same. My work proves the Etruscans and other ancient Italians, whose languages aren't Indo-European, did not come from the Orient or biblical characters. They were indigenous to Italy, and, being in the middle of the Mediterranean, they became great mariners who spread their system and civilized the world. With just a slight alteration in the identity of the Pelasgians, who were thought to be Greek, but were actually Etruscans, then it makes sense how all of these languages were nearly the same and how the ancient Italian languages had no affinity to Indo-European like Greek has. They are actual Europeans. The diaspora comes from them, not Greece by way of Asia Minor. With this adjustment, there is no need to figure out how letters were introduced into Italy. The Etruscan is Pelasgian, which is Phoenician. They originated in Italy. According to Pliny, the Pelasgi brought the letters into Italy, and it was the Pelasgic, not the Arcadian, meaning the first letters were not Ionic Greek, but were the more ancient Phoenician letters, also brought to Thessaly by the Pelasgi. But with the Etrusco-Phoenician Italian adjustment, it becomes apparent that the letters originated in Italy. And the reason there is so much unaccounted for regarding the Etruscans is the same reason there is much unaccounted for regarding the Phoenicians. Thomas Assel wrote, "The Punic letters are called Syrian and are much the same as the Carthaginian or Sicilian. They were an early branch from the Phoenician stock. To make a complete Punic, Carthaginian, or Sicilian alphabet, we must admit several pure Phoenician letters. The Pelasgi were of Phoenician original." This is as good as admitting the Etruscan is original Phoenician. Dionysius of Halicarnassus observed that Marsilius of Lesbos does not call the people Pelasgians but Turanians, which are Etruscans. And the same people were called by the rest of the world both Turanians, who are Italian, and Pelasgians. According to Herodotus, the Phoenician Pelasgi settled colonies in several islands of the Aegean Sea, such as Samothraki, Lemnos, Thessaly, all the old Hellas, Argolis, Arcadia, and also the seacoast of the Peloponnese. Recognizing that the Pelasgi are Etruscan, his claim would then better be phrased as the Etruscans, or ancient Italians, settled colonies in several islands of the Aegean Sea, as Samothraki, Lemnos, Thessaly, all the old Hellas, Argolis, Arcadia, and also the seacoast of the Peloponnese. This accounts for the Lemnos stela with Etruscan writing on it. Given that Herodotus claimed Argolis was settled by the Pelasgi, who you now know are Etruscans, examine the pyramid of Argolis with Etruscan polygonal masonry that the Greeks mythologized as being Cyclopean. Consider the words of Dr. Thirlwall, Bishop of St. David's. "The most ancient architectural monuments of Europe, which may perhaps outlast all that have been raised in later ages, clearly appear to have been the work of their hands." The huge structures, remains of which are visible in many parts of Greece and Epirus, Italy, and the western coast of Asia Minor, which are commonly described by the epithet of Cyclopean because, according to the Greek legends, the Cyclops built the walls of Tyreus and Mycenae, might be with more propriety called Pelagian, from their real authors. Several scholars noticed that the ancient Phoenician and Etruscan alphabets only consisted of 12 to 13 letters, but the Pelagic alphabet consisted of 16 letters. This would imply the early Etrusco-Phoenician alphabet is oldest, which means it originated in Italy, not the Orient. Assel mentioned this and wrote, "The Etruscan letters are Pelasgic, and several of the Etruscan inscriptions are written in the Pelasgic language. The Ashan language was a dialect of the Etruscan. Their characters are nearer the Ionic, or Roman, than the Etruscan. There is very little difference between the Pelasgian, the Etruscan, and the most ancient Greek letters, which are placed from right to left." The Ashan alphabet, even in this table, is the 16-letter system. But if you remove the more modern letters from the Ashan, B because it was interchangeable with V, CH, which is the equivalent of the Greek he, the F, or digamma, because it interchanges with several letters including the V, W, Y, etc., and the H because it was an aspirate, you're left with the 12-letter alphabet. But if you include the digamma instead of the V, as well as the H for the aspirate, then it's a 13-letter alphabet. With the correction that the Pelasgians are Etruscan, who are the Phoenicians, and polygonal masonry is Pelagian, which is Etruscan, or ancient Italian, then it follows logically that the only people who can be responsible for bringing it to the Americans in Peru are the Italians.